Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Monday, November 17th, 2025. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, we'll talk with Variety's Brent Lang about the magic conjured at the box office by Now You See Me, Now You Don't. And we'll hear from Focus Features chairman Peter Kujawski. He spoke with me last week about moviegoing, fandom, and other things pertinent to the film business. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. At the Motion Picture Academy's Governors Awards on Sunday night, the emotion was flowing as hard as the rain was earlier in the weekend. Tom Cruise gave a great speech about movie making being the definition of who he is, as he accepted his honorary Oscar. Debbie Allen and production designer Wyatt Thomas also made rousing speeches about the state of the business as they received honorary Oscars. At the one and only Dolly Parton received the Jean Hersholt Award for her humanitarian work, which is immense. She accepted her honor via video from Nashville. It was a great night all around. Sinclair Broadcast Group has been in rough shape now for a couple of years. There's even been talk of the company flirting with bankruptcy. But now they're going full speed in the other direction and trying to buy Scripps TV stations. This is in response to Nexstar going after Tegna. All of these deals are banking on rule changes at the FCC, because at present, these transactions would not be legal under the current law that limits the number of stations that a single entity can own. AI is a threat to the future of documentary films. This is the big theme coming out of the IDFA Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam this week. There's huge concerns among filmmakers that the rise of AI-created imagery is going to make it harder to document investigative reporting and many, many other issues. Variety correspondent Rafa Sales-Ross has a chilling report. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. Now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. If it's Monday, we're talking box office. Brent Lang, Variety's executive editor, walks us through the stumble of Running Man for Paramount Pictures and the surprise conjured by Now You See Me, Now You Don't for Lionsgate. Brent Lang, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Well, just like in baseball, it's why the sports writers go to every game. This weekend, the box office was very unpredictable. Brent, tell me what surprised you about this weekend.
The big surprise is Now You See Me, Now You Don't, which had a very solid domestic opening. It made $21.3 million over the weekend, and it did really well internationally. It picked up $54.2 million to bring its worldwide total to $75.5 million. And I think heading into the weekend, people felt that The Running Man with Glenn Powell, it's an Edgar Wright film, had a little more heat behind it. And that film ended up really underperforming. They had expected it to do between 20 to 25 million. It ended up doing 17 million domestically. But the really catastrophic part is that The Running Man did not perform well internationally. Running Man earned $11.2 million, which brings its global haul to $28.2 million.
And that weakness internationally is concerning because Edgar Wright, the director, who really does have a following, this is a big swing for him.
And I think the other thing that people were thinking was that Glenn Powell would be able to bring in a bigger audience because he has been something of a box office draw in recent years. He was in Anyone But You, this rom-com with Sydney Sweeney that way overperformed expectations. And then he also really had a very prominent role in Top Gun Maverick, and he led the cast of Twisters, which was a big summer hit. So it seemed like this was another A-lister, and this is a little bit of a dent in his ambitions to be a true above the title attraction.
I'm just looking deep in your story. Boy, Jeff Bach, top analyst for exhibitor relations, he does not mince words. Quote, "This thing is dead in the water," end quote. It seems to me from talking to you and talking to Rebecca Rubin that more than ever, these opening weekends, whether it's the AI or the data, they can really extrapolate how it's going to perform, hence giving somebody like Jeff Bach, who's a professional, the confidence to write off The Running Man, at least as far as its box office potential. Do you buy that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I also think the when you look even at like Predator Badlands, which had done very well in its opening weekend, got good reviews, got pretty good cinema scores, that film just dropped 68% in its second weekend. That's a pretty steep drop. And I don't think movies are sticking around as long as they did. And frankly, I think, Hollywood is to blame for this because they wanted to shrink the windows. They were obsessed with shrinking the windows, and they used COVID to effectively do that. But what they ended up doing was training people to wait until something became available on demand. And you're just not seeing the kind of word of mouth endurance hits that you used to have 5, 10 years ago. And I think a lot of that is because people have been preconditioned to wait until something comes on streaming.
So it was a good weekend for Lionsgate and for Jesse Eisenberg with Now You See
Yes.
Me.
Yes, it was a very good weekend for Lionsgate, and frankly, Lionsgate needed it. Lionsgate has had a really rough period at the box office for the past 2 years or so. They've had a number of films that just did not connect with audiences, like Ballerina and Good Fortune, and they've really struggled to figure out where they fit in this new landscape. They make mid-budget movies, and those are the exact type of movies that are having a lot of trouble drawing crowds right now. So I think the hope is that this kicks off something of a comeback for Lionsgate. And if you look ahead, the studio has its best slate in a long time. It has The Housemaid, which is an adaptation of a best-selling novel, hitting theaters in December. And then it has a Michael Jackson biopic called Michael coming in 2026. And of course, a new Hunger Games movie. So if Lionsgate could get a more consistent run of hits, that can really help the studio. There's always a lot of suspicion that Lionsgate is looking to do something in the M&A space. And if it gets a few more kind of commercial performers, maybe there will be a little more heat on it.
Another thing that stood out to me in your report, a new title from director Osgood Perkins, who was certainly buzzy last year with the movie Longlegs being a real surprise. His latest effort, A Horror Pick Keeper, you describe it as earning a paltry $2.5 million.
It surprised me that it was that bad. And the audience score of a D plus says that like nobody liked this thing.
Right.
Horror fans rejected it. This only cost $6 million, but it is a dent in Perkins' luster here because he really was like a consistent hit maker with Longlegs and The Monkey. He's got another movie coming out with Nicole Kidman called The Young People. So he'll have a chance to rebound. But it just shows that people are discerning, and you can't just throw a horror movie out into the marketplace and expect it to do big business. Like, it has to be of some quality.
Yep. Well, I know next weekend will be a much more active frame at the box office. Some big guns are coming. With the bigger titles that are coming in the next 6 weeks, what are you personally most looking forward to as a moviegoer?
As a moviegoer, I'm most looking forward to a movie that will not save the box office, but Marty Supreme, which I haven't seen yet with Timothy Chalamet, but really hopeful that it does do well because these adult-oriented movies, which are what I, as a moviegoer, like the most, have really struggled in terms of ticket sales. And I worry that if they aren't financially viable, studios will stop supporting them. And I think sometimes on film Twitter, you read, criticism and feedback of people saying, why are you so tough on this movie failing? And the reality is that we're not looking at them films if they are good or not. We're looking at them purely from a box office perspective. And these movies do need to make money because it is a business. And if they are no longer financially viable, then studios will stop making them.
That is absolutely true. After our conversation, Brent, we're going to hear from Peter Kujawski, chairman of Focus Features, who was kind enough to take part in Variety's Business Managers Breakfast last week. And he has some really strong thoughts about movie going. Focus really does make those adult dramas. So we're going to keep hope alive, Brent. And so appreciate you taking the time to talk through the box office numbers.
Thanks for having me.
As promised, here's Peter Kujawski, chairman of Focus Features. He's in his busy fall and winter season with Begonia now in theaters and Hamnet and Song Sung Blue on the way. Kujawski took time to be our featured guest on November 13th at Variety's annual Business Managers Breakfast event in West Hollywood. Kujawski is a movie evangelist, and here he offers up his thoughts about the state of moviegoing. This is an interesting time for you because you have 3 big movies coming out. Begonia has just been released formally in theaters, and you have 2 big ones coming, Song Sung Blue and Hamnet. 2025 has been a rocky year for the box office. But as you're planning for 2026, how are you feeling about the momentum and where the film business is?
The communal act of coming together to watch movies in theaters and digesting a story as a collective is innate in who we are, right? As a people, right? As a civilization. So I think that's always going to be strong. There's going to be ups and downs, and for sure, we're seeing a moment at the box office this year where it's a little tricky. But at the same time, look at the world, right? It's like look at the cost of living. So of course, in that moment, you're going to have a little bit of a challenge of movie going and things like that. But that's never permanent. These are cycles that we always, go through and face. And within the context of what people's options are for entertainment, what people's options are for engaging in a dialogue, movies are always a great option. And I truly believe, we're all talking about the October that the movie business just had. By the end of November, I think we're going to be telling a very different story. By the time you see Wicked come out, by the time we've got Hamnet in theaters, by the time we see the legs that we're seeing on Begonia right now and all those things, I think it really is just one of these moments where you have people having to make choices about where they're going and how they're spending their money.
And here, Kujawski talks about Universal's general approach to making the numbers work with the kind of adult dramas that Brent Lang mentioned earlier. Kujawski also discusses the film business shift from thinking strictly in four quadrants to the wider world of movie fan psychographics. His enthusiasm is infectious.
I say it truly hand on heart. We, as Focus and Universal, make more revenue for every dollar of box office that we get in than anywhere else, right? And that allows us to then go and say to filmmakers like Yorgos Lanthimos, to filmmakers like Chloe Zhao, let's fuel this movie. Let's really give this movie what it needs. Like if Chloe Zhao needs to build the Globe Theater from scratch to tell the story of Hamnet as well as she told it, then let's go and do that.
Would you say that Hamnet, Song Sung Blue, and Begonia, are they basically going for an adult drama audience, or do you see those three films as going for very distinct slices of the adult movie-going audience?
I think we probably all still have a knee-jerk reaction to think about audience with quads or whatever, That's long been out the window. Well, of course, there's things you do that you have to pay attention to quads because of certain marketing tools and things like that. But the much more effective tools that we use are the sort of psychographics, right? There's groups that are tastemakers. There's groups that are creators themselves. There's groups that are like the edgy, dark world of materials, whether it's like in the worlds of gaming or movies or TV or whatever. So within that framework, yes, each of those films has very distinct and different audiences, which again is how we can do three films like that so rapidly on our schedule and really feel like we give them each their lane. Where Begonia very much, it's got edge. It's about issues of today. Hamnet is very much the journey of the emotional depth of just what it means to feel and have family and lose and love and all of those things. And then Song Sung Blue is this complete wrap of this joy bomb of a true story of real people falling in love with each other who really had very little, you know what I mean? Like tip jar musicians find each other, fall in love, and that love story then expands their ability to like go and do their art in a way that like lets them dream the biggest dreams that they could and live this huge life that they did, even when there is tragedy at the center of it. And those are all different audiences for different psychographics in a way, but that includes all ages. There's, with each of these movies, a letterbox crowd, the young, cool, cinephile, teens, 20s crowd. And truly, for all of these movies, there is also a ton of people in their 50s, 60s showing up who just like have grown up knowing that movies matter and can tell these great stories and be compelling. So I think you've got a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram between those psychographics, but the way you talk to them about these movies is different and activates a different part of those personalities who might be into all three of those films.
And nowadays, you have no shortage of venues to talk to people. Okay, my last question. You did something I know was important to you, Focus Fest. You brought your hardcore art house lover, adult drama. Give us a couple of things that you left Focus Fest knowing about your audience that you didn't know when it started.
It was actually really amazing. We did this experiential event on the Universal lot where we screened four movies, two from the back catalog and two new ones. So we started with The Big Lebowski, then we screened Promising Young Woman, then we screened Begonia, and then almost midnight screening of Obsession, the horror movie we bought at Toronto this year. And there was a real question of like, okay, Focus Fest, it's a long day. Oh, are we going to have people just show up for the two new ones and smaller crowd for the library titles? And I showed up right at noon when it began, and it was packed already.
And you sold tickets to the public.
We sold tickets, exactly. And it was packed with people who genuinely wanted all of those movies, to the point of there's an audience that just wants to engage across the spectrum of what these movies can be. And I think you look at Focus and go like, oh, it's probably like an older audience who's like a little more sophisticated, genteel. It's like, no, these are folks who are like, hell yes, I'm going to wait in that line and I want my Big Lebowski bowling shirt pressed. And then I want to go to the Promising Young Woman Cafe and get my coffee with Cassie's Spit, which was just pumps of flavor or whatever. But it was like they wanted to engage these movies that way. And again, just feel like the experience of the movie could be extended into life in that way of owning it and feeling really a part of it, on through then being the tastemakers who were among the very first to see then Begonia and Obsession. I think like there was a real passion. We had people fly in from different parts of the country for Focus Fest, which we did not expect. It was great.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Keep your eye on Variety.com this evening. We are doing a live stream with Mark Malkin from Universal's gala premiere of Wicked for Good at Lincoln Center. The long-awaited Part 2 hits theaters on Friday. Season 2 of A Man on the Inside arrives Thursday on Netflix. Ted Danson and Michael Schur are a potent combination. Before we go, congrats to the half-dozen CAA trainees who were promoted to agent last week. Remember these names: Josie Abrams, Stefano Priante, Will Perslow, Sydney Schiffman, Serena Silver, and Morgan Southwick. Go get 'em. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Brent Lang. Stick, snakes, hick, picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in tomorrow for another episode of Daily Variety.